So, welcome to Dice Nights Episode 5, which we have so affectionately titled 101 Ways to Meet in a Tavern, Part 1, because we will be doing multiple parts of this at some point or another. Let's go around and just say who's on the podcast for tonight. Those of you listening, I'm Eric.
I am Chris. Hello.
And Bailey.
So, this week's episode, we're talking about basically 101 ways to put a twist on the old tavern meeting for your first session. There will very clearly not be 101 ways.
Oh gosh, no.
Oh yeah,
At least not
definitely.
tonight.
We could probably come up with 101. Just
Oh,
not
yeah.
for one
Ton
video
of them, yeah.
or podcast. That said, how about we start this off by talking about how we all started, like, each of our individual games as examples.
Yeah.
Would one of you like to start?
Sure, I guess Bailey, ladies first, you can go first.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Chris. So when I started my game, they met in a tavern, of course, and basically it was a traveling tavern. You might have met the bartender Whirl. She was in what's the second podcast?
Yeah, second
Lich
episode of
Please?
Lich Please.
The second
Yeah.
Lich, please. Yep.
Yeah. So that was her, and she basically just has a traveling bar, and they were all kind of in the middle of their travels, from what I got from their backstories. So I just slapped the tavern down wherever I wanted it, and they kind of had it was really awkward. They talked to each other, talked to the owner, and met some not so very nice guys picking on the Kenku. So that was fun. And just like giving them like weird aspects to play with and try and explore what the tavern was exactly. Without giving too much information away at first. But then basically I slammed them with a adult white dragon at level 3. And so that kind of spiraled from there as they found that there was a weird marking on the dragon that they still don't know anything about. So that's fun.
Yeah. My character also found out, 1, he has a sister, and 2, he is royalty.
Yeah, I hadn't planned on that coming out so early, but it did.
Yep.
Because it kind of fit.
Yep. Well, next down the line, since I'm the only one who hasn't started a game with people meeting at a tavern.
Oh yeah,
Chris,
sure,
go.
yeah. So in my game, they all met. If you're listening to the last podcast, I was talking about the starting town, which is Geneva, massive city, biggest city in existence. It's huge. But they met in a tavern on the outskirts of it called the Province's Peace, which was run by a gentleman named Antonio, who's like a Spanish guy, tavern owner. And basically they all walked in. They were the only people in the tavern because, well, like, I needed some way to get them together. Only people in the tavern, only people need to interact with each other. They were the only people there apart from the tavern owner, because I want them to interact. And I also, beforehand, I asked them if there was anywhere specific they needed to get to in the city. So one of their characters is a bit of a bookworm. They wanted to get to the library. One of the other characters also needed to go to the library in the city because they were delivering notes there. Then 2 of the other characters, Eric's character and Celia, who's not here, their characters wanted to get to like the guild part of the city. But to get to those parts of the city that all those things were in, they needed like these passes to get in. So they all needed to go figure out how to get those passes, which they asked the tavern owner for. And they were all like, and the tavern owner was like, hey, you can either pay a shit ton of gold, sorry, not meant to be cursing, you're gonna pay a ton of gold,
Keep track of the
or
comments, folks.
yeah, it's another $1 in the
Where's
swear
that
jar,
swear
another
jar,
euro in the
Chris?
swear jar. You can either pay like a ton of gold. I think it was like something like 10,000 gold or something. It was like a ridiculous amount of like gold to get one of these passes. or you could become a member of one of the guilds. But the easiest guild to become a part of was called the Valiant Titans. It's basically like the Adventurers Guild. Once you become a full member, you get a pass to go into any part of the city, because sometimes a job might be in a city or whatever, in one of the more expensive parts of the city. So you get a pass to go in there. So they all joined together, decided, hey, let's go all join, do a job so we can get the passes, and then go into the city. And then they did that, and then they just ended up staying together. So that's how they all met in a tavern for me.
And then there's my group, which was fun because out of all three of these games, it was the earliest one to start, and it was the only one to not start in a tavern because I'm running a game in the Tal'Dorei setting, and so I had wanted sort of a legacy game set after Critical Role Campaign 1. And so they started off in City of Whitestone. They were known to some of the player characters from Critical Role's first campaign, and actually wound up being, pardon me, voice crack, being pulled. They wound up getting pulled. Sorry, voice is a little bit hoarse because we had a number of laughing fits before this recording started.
Yep.
Anyways.
Jazz, it was funny.
Don't start, Chris. Anyways, so essentially they wound up getting pulled out of the town guard to be made part of essentially a government black ops squad, is the best way I can describe it. And so they went through this whole thing where they basically got tested to see if they could be part of this team that was meant to sort of be the successors to the player party from Critical Role. And then at the end of the session, I introduced their main villain for Arc 1 by having him straight up attack Castle Whitestone and threaten the lords and ladies of the city. And that sort of drew them together just because I had it set where their characters were basically coworkers in the guard, didn't know each other all that well, but and so this sort of knitted them together because he directly attacked what was essentially their charge to guard at the time, and that sort of pushed them gently towards chasing this main villain down. Not so gently, but it was great. And then it ended with that villain becoming a good guy.
Jesus.
What was that? Oh, wow. Someone just tried to call me. I'm glad I had